Det har jeg. Der er nemlig stadig masser af gang i den grønne vækstkonference herinde i den store rådhussal. Lige nu er der en paneldebat i gang oppe på scenen, og der sker også noget her i på vores lille scene, TV2NEWS' lille scene. Jeg har nemlig fået besøg af Yvo de Boer, som var chef klimaforhandler for FN, dengang at der var COP15 i København, FN's store klimakonference. Mr. de Boer, welcome and thank you for joining us today at TV2 News. The last time I saw you in Denmark, I know you've been here a couple of times since 2009, was during the COP15 in Copenhagen. The outcome of the COP15 was the so-called Copenhagen Accord, and I'm pretty sure that you and many others were not at all satisfied with that outcome. Today, you're no longer the chief negotiator for climate talks in the UN. Is that a relief, sir?
Oh, for me personally, it's a huge relief. I mean, it was an incredibly stressful time. It was a very difficult process, politically very complicated. So in that sense, it's a relief for me personally. But I must say, I do wish there was more enthusiasm, more advance in the process now.
But there is not, as you see it?
I think things are very difficult at the moment. Developing countries want to see a continuation of the Kyoto Protocol, which is something that Japan, Russia and Canada are not interested in. Many countries would like to work towards a new global treaty. That's something that the United States has great difficulty with. So I think the prospects politically are looking very difficult at the moment.
When we were talking just before we started airtime on TV2, you said that it was sort of a circus at the COP15, and it felt like a big circus. What has happened since then? What's changed in the way that we talk about climate today since 2009?
I think given the way the Copenhagen Climate Change Conference went, that climate change as an issue has slipped very much down the agenda, and that's been reinforced by the economic crisis and the financial crisis that we're seeing in many parts of the world, especially in Europe and the United States. So I think the focus now is on short-term economic concerns, and climate has slipped a bit off the agenda.
But now we're talking green growth in Copenhagen. Is that a way to bring back climate to the agenda?
I think it can be, and I think it needs to be. I think we need a positive message that focuses on how we green the economy of the world, how we create more employment in doing that, and address a number of environmental issues, including climate, at the same time.
But at this conference, do you see any change in the discourse of climate change? Do we talk about it in another way that we used to do?
I think certainly the private sector is talking about it in a very different way. Companies would still like to see leadership from politicians and still need leadership from politicians. But having said that, many companies are moving ahead and acting on this topic anyway.
You're today working in the private sector. Is that where the challenges of climate change are being met today in the private sector?
I think that's where a large part of the solution is being found, in the sense that many companies are moving ahead on this topic, in large part because it's in their own economic interest, because they can reduce cost or enhance their brand or explore new markets.
But are we going to be able to slow global warming just by talking about it in the private sector? Don't we still need the political path to move forward?
Well, certainly talking about it in the private sector is not enough. Unfortunately, the private sector is doing more than talking, it's acting as well. But you're absolutely right that at the end of the day, you need a clear policy perspective from politicians to achieve the kind of ambition that we need to achieve.
And do you see that perspective? Do you see any politicians today on the global scene have those ambitions?
To be honest, at the moment, no. I don't think we're seeing that political leadership at this moment in time. I think we were hoping for it from President Obama at the time of the climate change conference here in Copenhagen. Many European leaders have shown leadership on this topic in the past, but are now preoccupied with the Eurozone crisis. So no, I'm not seeing that leadership.
And you don't think that if the Eurozone crisis continues and a lot of things point in that direction, and nothing seems to be stopping at the moment economically, crisis-wise. If the Eurozone crisis continues, do you not see anything happening on the green growth climate scene?
No, I think it will happen. I mean, if you look at where is the strongest economic growth happening, it's happening in developing countries that are not suffering from this economic crisis. And those countries are also trying to green their economies. So in that sense, I think a new kind of race is on, with countries like China, Korea, really embracing sustainable growth. And I just hope that at the end of the day, Europe doesn't have to catch up in the context of all of that.
US is still not moving ahead in the climate scene. How important is the US in this question?
Politically, I think the US is incredibly important. I think it's very difficult to get major developing countries like China and India to make a commitment in the context of an international treaty when the United States is refusing to do so. So politically, the United States is essential. But if you look at what's happening in the real world, in the real economy, their developing countries are blasting ahead without waiting for the United States.
And is that what's going to happen? There is a COP17 happening in Durban, South Africa in a couple of weeks. What do you see happen at the COP17?
Well, what I hope will happen at the COP17 in Durban is that we will see a new mandate to negotiate towards a global treaty that will include different kinds of commitments for all countries.
But is that realistic?
That's going to be very difficult. I'm not writing it off now. I think it's going to be very difficult indeed. I think we'll have a big fight about the future or the non-future of the Kyoto Protocol. But we really need that perspective of something global being negotiated.
And is that, how optimistic are you for the future? Let me put it like that.
I'm reasonably optimistic for the future. I'm not very optimistic about the politics of the process. I'm not very optimistic about the international negotiations, but I am optimistic in the sense that I see a number of economies, especially developing country economies, understanding that green growth really is the only way forward.
Mr. Yvo de Boer, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.